Okay, so what problem was the phone system meant to solve in general? So before we get into this, honestly, at the most fundamental level, what's a phone system supposed to do for us? I think it's supposed to connect people. So I know that sounds pretty obvious, but it's supposed to connect people for audio communications primarily, right? We know that now some incorporate video and some other neat things like that, but honestly, it's supposed to connect people for audio communications inside and outside. Fair enough? Secondly, it's supposed to replace manual switching because it's brutal, the idea that we should have to have somebody sitting at a switchboard 24 hours a day in order to put us in connection with other people. So it's supposed to pool resources. So, and that, by that I mean, it's financially not viable, honestly, for each of us to have a line per phone. So let me get into that. As far as jargon goes, as far as telephony jargon goes, to phone system people like myself, to phone technicians, a line is something that comes from Bell Canada or Digitcom or Allstream or whatever. A line is what we call a CO. They're called lots of different things. CO just meaning central office, but a line is something that comes in from the outside into your phone system, okay? So if I wanted to have a conference call of 3 parties, and phone systems didn't exist, I would need 3 lines on my phone then, right? I would need to pay Bell or whoever $20, $30, $40 a month per line and have 3 pieces of wire or something connected to my phone. That's rudimentarily, that's what I would need to do. So of course, with phone systems, we know that they take in so many lines. Let's say I have an office of 15 people and I need to have a conference call of 3 people. It's not a problem because if I had, say, 8 lines or something, that would be better than 1 line per person. So or 1 line, pardon me, for every 2 people. And we all know that not everybody's on the phone at the same time. And even if they are on the phone, maybe they're talking to each other and not to anybody on the outside. So if we could route all of our private traffic between each other using a phone system, and if we could bring in fewer lines than 1 per person, it would be far more economical. And that's one of the things that phone systems are supposed to do. It's pool resources. And then another thing that we depend on them for nowadays, for sure, is taking messages, right? It's voicemail. So you call my extension, and I'm busy giving a webinar. You get my voicemail, and I can check it at a later time. So it's a modern requirement, and I mean that because I think about it. I entered the telephony world about 15 years ago. I can't say that I saw too many systems really that didn't have voicemail systems. A few over my career, but I can tell you that a lot of the systems that I've taken out, that was their very first voicemail system. And those people tell the story. And I tell you, it was the late 90s or the early 2000s that they got that voicemail system. So voicemail has really, for a guy my age, hasn't really been out there as long as we maybe think it has been. And then lastly, I know this is a silly one, but showing when others are on the phone, it needs to do that for the receptionist, if you've got one. It needs to do it for each other so that it kind of tells us when another person's on another line. And again, I look at that, strangely enough, as being a real responsibility of the phone system. I know it sounds innocuous, like saying voicemail is a responsibility. It's something that you wouldn't think of. It's not like I was looking to fill 5 boxes. I really believe that it's a valid feature that phone systems need to have. It's one of the few things that our cell phones, incidentally, are missing now, is when we call somebody, it doesn't tell us that they're on the phone already, unless you're running a cell phone on it. All right, so how does a phone system work? So we're halfway through here, and I'm gonna look over here to my other monitor. I've grabbed a few of these guys. So which one is this? IP-based CAD, perfect, okay. So I'm gonna bring over a diagram, and then we can draw on it. So let's see here. I'll maximize this, there we go. So I made this diagram up, honestly, earlier on today. That's kind of Windows. And I just wanted to show you how a phone call works and roughly how a PBX works. Okay, we will do not disturb. There we go. Another modern phone system feature. All right, so we're taking a look at this right now. And what this is this represents a modern IP PBX. So I'm just showing this because it really doesn't matter whether it's IP based or not, but I wanted to show you really the difference between the different technologies that are out there. So a modern little phone system down here, let me circle it for you. Right here, he's down here. He's in your office. So customer main site, oops, gosh, here we go. Customer main site, so this is you. And down here you've got a LAN, right? You've got computers all plugged into switches and so on, and you've got access to the internet. So just don't pay a lot of attention to the rest of the diagram at the moment. And then you've got some telephones. And the telephones, you can see the little line here is connected directly to the PBX. So this is, again, this is our version of the old monster PBX that you saw that. Somebody's asking, are we going to get a copy of this presentation? Certainly are. So they're all connected directly to that PBX because I want to show you sort of digital sets. What I mean by that is the phones have been digital, gosh, since the 80s. A lot of customers think they were analog. They're not. Those old North Star phones that were on your desk were digital. They're digital between themselves and the PBX. So that's digital transfer. If you were to put a butt set on that line, like if I could splice that cord and put my analog set on there, I wouldn't hear anything except for screeching and beeps. All right, they're digital, I promise. That PBX, that old North Star modular ICS or compact ICS or Panasonic KX-TDA 100, whatever it is that it was there, from there on in, whether it be PRI, analog, whatever, that technology is what it is. So if it's analog lines, it's analog lines. But between that KSU, the PBX, whatever you want to call it, and your telephone, that was digital. Okay, so these guys here are connected via the standard little phone cord that you're used to seeing all the way into the back room where they plug into the phone system. Okay, so a telephone call comes in from somebody on the outside. They dial a number, it goes through the PSTN, the public switch telephone network, and then it ends up coming in on a trunk that we just kind of learned about into your phone system. That trunk could be digital, could be a PRI, it could be analog lines, whatever the case may be, but somebody dialed certain numbers that were understood by the PSTN. Could have been their house, could have been their office. And it finally routed to your phone system, which made some sense out of it. Maybe sent it off to an auto attendant, which would be represented by the server here. And if it did, wonderful. And then you dialed an extension and it sent it back to the phone system and then out to the station. And this person picks it up or doesn't pick it up and it goes to voicemail. Very simple, right? These lines, the number of lines that you pay for to the PSTN, very simple. The technology that you choose, you can go for it. PRI being a digital trunk, analog lines being analog lines, or IP lines going to a server in the internet. And then I wanted to show you these guys here, these remote sites. I'm going to show you 3 diagrams here real quick. These remote sites don't change at all. So these remote sites are guys like me working from a home office. And I need to get back to my phone system somehow. So I need some sort of a technology that gets me from here through the public internet, through my little modem here at the office, and then the firewall and into the phone system so that when I call somebody, I get to route to their station as well. Okay, and if I want to dial a 9 to get an outside line, I come in all this way and I come to our PBX and the 9 says, hey, you should grab this trunk. And of course it goes out to the PSTN and it dials whoever it's supposed to dial. Right, so that's how a phone system works. That's it. So the confusion is these surrounding technologies. So what kind of lines should I buy? And it's based usually on price as much as it is technology, but price can discern which line you want over another. And then lastly, all these remote workers, you hear about them working on their cell phone. I've put different pictures in here, cell phone, a tablet, a soft phone on the computer, a physical IP phone at your house. I have one in front of me right here. All these different things. People ask you, how do I need a cloud-based phone system, for example, to make that happen? Well, no, this isn't a cloud-based phone system. This is one at our office that I happen to be joined up to using some technology that allows me to get secure path from here into the phone system. And it really isn't complicated. So could I have a phone system that has regular analog lines and is kind of old-fashioned and sits in my phone room, but then have people work at home? Absolutely, this model shows it. Or could I have everybody in the office on new IP-based telephony? Absolutely. Let me go here and grab this for you. So this one here shows these people. Oh, there we go. So this is an IP-based phone system. You'll notice that there's only one difference here, and that's right here. So this is a different type of trunk. So this person has SIP trunks, for example. So this person, actually they have SIP trunks and they have some sort of a PRI. But the point is this: when the caller calls in to the public switch telephone network, it's joined to the internet nowadays. Bell, Allstream, all these guys are joined to the internet. So if it so happens that this person calls a subscriber who has a SIP trunk. So who has a SIP means session initiated protocol. It's brutal. Let's just call it an IP trunk. Okay, so somebody who actually has, rather than an actual physical line into their box, they join to the internet and they pay per channel to a provider like Digitcom, for example, to get their telephone numbers and their lines. The PSTN knows that and sends the call correctly to this cloud and then back into the PBX. So I guess my point just being that with regards to modern phone systems, you can mix and match as you see fit. Again, we haven't even talked about a cloud-based phone system yet. We still have users at home. We now are using the less expensive option of SIP-based trunks rather so much than PSTN. I have both in the diagram, but you can imagine that if these are less expensive to use, that's the ones we're using. And again, I did this so that you can see that a phone system really could have both. If you're nervous about putting all of your eggs in one basket, don't put them all in one basket. You can most certainly have lines through standard analog lines or a PRI or whatever the case is into the normal PSTN. All right, now next, we're gonna go with the next iteration. And this, I almost wanna show you on one screen, but I can't quite. This right here, pardon me, shows you a cloud-based PBX provider. So if you're looking at, rather than having a phone system, a PBX in your back office at all, you like the monthly spend of a cloud-based provider, you can most certainly do that. And you'll notice down here, here's a big difference. It's the way the phones connect. So these phones are in what we call a voice LAN. Because if Digitcom was designing this for you, we would make sure that the phones were at least logically separated from your data devices so that your computers don't end up killing your voice conversation. But the point is the phones are a part of the network down here, and they use the firewall and the modem. And the thing that we're missing from here is the PBX. There's no PBX and there's no voicemail system. So in the other picture, we had the server and the PBX. We now don't. And these phones connect to the network. They go out and they home in on a phone system that lives here in the cloud. So you're probably thinking, what does one of those look like? How come I didn't draw a picture? Honestly, because it's software. So in the case of Digitcom, for example, we have a number of different offerings. Some are in Amazon Web Services and some of them are at 151 Front. But all of them, pardon me, regardless of the brand, all of them are located as a soft switch software in the cloud. Okay, and the cloud itself is so resilient and has so many backup options that as far as this is concerned, it's extremely stable. And all these users now, rather than connecting all the way into your office and sort of this point of failure being your internet, and other things, rather than that even being a consideration, they connect directly to the cloud-based PBX provider. So if your network, and this is really the big weakness, if your network was to go down, so your internet was dead, with this solution here, we really don't have much to fall back on. There's a thing called hybrid telephony that we won't get into here today because of time, but there are methods of putting things on site that will let you connect to the outside in case your connection was down. But really, the reality is, for the most part, most vendors you're looking at don't offer that. And if your internet's down, you want either another internet connection or you're going to send everybody home so that they can work at home. So the options are not bad, don't get me wrong, but that is the reality of it. All right, so that kind of brings us through your three scenarios. I'll minimize these guys and we'll go back to the presentation here. I realize we're a couple of minutes over. We've also, we also started a couple minutes late. So the additional features of a modern phone system, you've got call recording, call reporting, call center features, system administration that you can do on your own versus the old PBXs, which I don't even need to go back to that picture. You can imagine that you couldn't program those on your own. User self-administration, which is great. Any modern PBX allows your users to go and change things like their voicemail password, listen to their messages through their browser, things like that, change their button programming through their browser, all those sorts of, that sort of functionality. User self-administration is just par for the course these days. And then lastly, advanced auto attendant capabilities. So some of the things that people are looking for are voice recognition, message transcription, that can transcribe and send me my voicemail to email things like that. And again, that's something that modern phone systems that we sell are capable of doing. All right. One of the other interesting things too is auto attendants that can look things up in a database. So something that that some of the products we've sold have been doing for 13 years, and yet it's remarkable to me that it isn't more mainstream. So your phone system can do an awful lot more for you today than you probably think. So real quick, myth versus fact here. So phone systems are complicated. I don't think so. I think you just learn that they're not. You saw how they work at a fundamental level, not complicated, right? End user administration, users and administrators can't program them. Well, they can today. So again, it's not feature star 266344 through a telephone set, kind of requiring a lot of experience with it. They're very easy. Some companies like our own even teach you how to do it if you buy a system from us. They take up space in the data room. Traditional phone systems do, but they're very small. They're 1.5 U. So that black cabinet that I showed you earlier on, that's 1.5 units in your data rack. So they're quite small. And then of course, cloud-based phone systems take up zero space at all because they're in the cloud. IP phones all rely on the internet. I think we covered this again back in one of those diagrams where we showed the IP phones are on your network and they talk to your PBX. So they don't necessarily depend on the internet. You can have IP phones in your office that talk to your phone system, and then your phone system uses conventional lines. Like we said, you can mix and match. So if your concern is, gosh, I don't want to go to IP phones because they're all on the internet, that's completely false. They could be talking to a phone system, and the phone system uses your traditional digital line like a PRI or analog lines, whatever makes you happy. And then of course, one day when you do decide to decommission that phone system, your phones are IP phones and they are actually ready to talk to the internet. You can reuse the sets. And then lastly, cloud-based phone systems. This is something we didn't really get into the dollars and cents, but I do want to do a future webinar on this. Cloud-based phone systems are expensive because you pay monthly. And not really. When you look at a total cost of ownership, sometimes it's around 5 years or so that they end up kind of going on par with each other. But what I like to do is actually break down for people the real cost of a phone system, because there are monthly fees, like for example, your lines, for your maintenance, for the amortization of your upgrades to keep your phone system current, all those pieces that you don't pay for when you're paying monthly for a cloud-based phone system. You don't typically pay for them. So, and certainly not an hour model. So when you really look at the real total cost of ownership of a phone system that you supposedly own and you've already paid for, when you look at what that actually costs you per month and you amortize the value of it over a few years, you'd be very surprised that the two of them actually come up very even. And certainly in the shorter term, the IP-based phone system ends up, a lot better deal. So lastly, folks, in closing, I hope you got something out of this. I know it's a kind of whirlwind, 20 minutes, half an hour to do all that we've talked about. But upcoming topics will include advanced auto attendant features, getting more out of your phone system, call center reporting. I'd like to take a couple big reporting packages that we offer. We offer 2 or 3 major manufacturers, and I'd like to kind of run them up against each other so you can see each of them. They're all kind of similar in what they accomplish, but they do it in very different ways. Demystifying telephony follow-up, which of course is a Q&A session that we're promising every 3 webinars that we give. We'll do a complete Q&A whereby I stand here or somebody does and answers your questions about our previous topics. And then remote work connectivity. Being a remote worker myself, it's one of my favorite topics. There are probably in this room alone, there are about 6 different ways to connect to the office. And I mean distinctly different, from a cell phone based soft phone to a soft phone on the computer, multiple different types of handsets, using your cell phone itself in both the twin mode and calling an outside or calling a direct inward system access number to place phone calls. Like, there's so many different ways of doing it. It's kind of fascinating. So we can certainly cover, we can take 20 minutes to talk about that at some point.